Well, welcome back to another episode of the Always About People show. We're back in the studio, and I've got Lorenzo with me. Lorenzo, it's good to have you.
Glad to be back.
Lorenzo is a colleague here at Always About People, and we're excited to cover a new topic today, a topic that we've heard from a number of the leaders that we work with, organizations that we're working with. These are interesting times. Yeah. And I think the conversations that we've been having with these leaders is really about how do we care for and foster and reinforce and motivate the people that are under our care or the individuals within our organization. And so while we've heard this topic come up a number of times, we thought we would just address it live. And so we want to encourage you, those of you that are watching us live, please send in comments, questions. We really would love to address any questions you have live on the air. For those of you who may be watching this after the fact as a recording, we'd also love to get to any comments or questions that you may leave. And we want to be helpful to you. That's why we're doing this show. The Always About People show was set up to just cover interesting topics related to people and organizations and cultures, the things that actually affect people, their motivation and their performance. And we try to cover topics that we hear from the organizations that we're working with. And so today the topic is people need to be reminded. And what's come up in a number of conversations lately with organizations is, gosh, my people, my teammates, they feel exhausted. They feel worried, stressed, anxious. And I think in other cases, it's organizations saying, I feel like I need to reinforce mission, vision, values, or maybe it's those leaders who have said, I feel like I've told people this so many times. How can I tell them that again? And so we wrote kind of the description to this show. We said, vision leaks and fear creeps. And what we mean by that is that vision over time can leak out. It can be forgotten. And what comes in to replace it is fear. Fear creeps in and replaces those gaps and those missing places where vision has leaked out. And so people need to be reminded and reassured. Confusion, fear, and insecurity can enter the culture or your culture very quickly, whether it's an organization or a family or an institution or a nonprofit or a church or organization of any kind. Right. It can enter so quickly. And so it involves intentional repetition. And I think sometimes, Lorenzo, it's really hard to think, you mean I have to tell them again?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of thoughts going through my head. The Allen family has a new puppy, and it would be like saying, I told him how to sit one time.
Right.
That does not work.
Exactly.
I told him his name. He doesn't even recognize his name. And so there's an art and a need to continue to remind people, to bring them back to this place. And so I thought, as we entered into this conversation, we were talking about how do we show this?
Yeah.
How do we show it? So that's what this glass is for. But we've been thinking about this idea of reinforcing mission, vision, values. And so one thing that people need to be reminded about is the foundation of the organization, right? Why you're doing what you're doing, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and how you're going to go about doing it through values. And we brought in some a science experiment today. We'll hope that this works. But ultimately, like this syrup represents this foundation in an organization. And the foundation is set with what's most important: mission, vision, values. But the problem is we get bombarded in an organization all day long.
Right.
Well, not even in an organization, in life, with social media, news stories that we're hearing before they even happen, feels like, fears, anxieties, worries, market updates, stock market updates, 401k updates, whatever it may be. And it feels like all day long, we're bombarded with this other information that just sort of fills our minds. And so what happens is that there's this kind of gradual mixing of what was a foundation with all this other information. And yet we know that the foundation in this organization was just a very little amount of liquid. But ultimately, I get bombarded with all this other information represented by the water, that just gradually fills my mind. And we see this sort of mixing, this constant mixing. And really what's a part of all that's in my mind is a very small amount of mission, vision, values. And so as I get bombarded with all this information every day, gradually this thing would overflow. By the way, I don't want to show that here today. We'd have a mess. But I get bombarded. And I think what we're seeing in organizations today is that what was this foundation around mission, vision, values has now been diluted by so much other information that happens all day long. Yeah. And so what we would just say quickly is people need to be reminded. Have you shared mission, vision, values with the team? And obviously this goes beyond mission, vision, values. Lorenzo, before the show, we were talking about all the other ways we need to be reminding people.
Right.
But I think it's just important as leaders that we understand people's brains are diluted with all this news, information, fears, anxieties, and everything else. How do we get back to the foundation?
Yeah. I mean, well, first off, hopefully we've set a great foundation as well. And so we shouldn't assume that we know it. So one thing that you could even start with is talking to your team. You can have the words put on a wall, a poster, a great video. But if you go to a team meeting, hey, we want to talk about where our company's at and what our values are. Who here can share? And if you're in a meeting where it goes crickets, well, you might have found your starting point. We have to reestablish our values and culture. And so if that's a place that you're in, then that's a great starting point. But assuming that some people are aware of the values and they truly believe in it, then it's like you were just illustrating the news that they're constantly being filled with. And I would even add to that where the water could essentially be whether it's what they're being told or what they're seeing as actions. And so we could have that word on the wall. They've memorized it. And you were talking about a puppy. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. If I tell them that they shouldn't be doing something that goes against our family values.
Yeah.
And if I do it, you know, who's the first accountability partner that's going to tell me I went against our values? My 5-year-old. And at that point, I have a choice. Do I kind of try to wash it away, pretend like it didn't happen, come up with an excuse to justify myself? Or do I actually own up for that action, reset the value and correct? And I think that's where a lot of trust is lost too in what the culture, the values are when the actions aren't meeting up with the words.
All right. So vision leaks a couple of different ways. The first way is vision can leak because we're just not reinforcing it. We're not reminding people. We're not repeating it enough, and it's not in the language. Another way that vision can leak is by simply the leaders of an organization or individuals not actually acting, behaving in a way that's in alignment with the mission, vision, values. No faster way to create leakage in an organization than for the organization, for colleagues, for team members to look at leadership and go, hey, wait a minute, you said we're this.
Right.
The words are on the wall. We're not acting that way. That can be seen in hiring. Yep. So we've seen across a number of organizations that you may hire a superstar, maybe a technical expert, maybe a great salesperson who you know is not in alignment with the mission, vision, values, but you're doing it for performance or for what they can bring to the sales side. No greater way for vision to leak.
Right. Or you have the top performer or an individual. It doesn't even have to be a top performer. Sometimes for whatever reason, we have this individual on our team, the actions aren't lining up. The team is waiting to see how the leader responds. It's almost like you're starting to poke holes at this glass or this bucket, and this vision is just slowly leaking out. Because again, the actions that you aren't taking are also speaking volumes. One thing that I've been looking into a lot recently too, a topic that I'm passionate about is what are we also acknowledging? So talking about the good times, what are we celebrating? Are we being intentional with how we recognize or honor a top performer or someone that's doing well? So a quick example is part of an organization where the person that got acknowledged was because they stayed late on a Friday night, hours past their work time, and they pulled something off. So, hey, if you love your job and you're willing to put in extra hours, that's I'm not against that. But from a company perspective, is that what you want to show that needs to the culture that you want to embrace?
Yeah.
I think in that situation, I'd much rather acknowledge the individual maybe on the side and, hey, thank you for taking the time to put in that extra work. We want to honor you with such and such. But from standing in front of the organization, that may actually be more defeating in a culture than promoting it.
Yeah. So we kind of have this line around here: reinforce and reward what you want to see reproduced. So if you're reinforcing and rewarding working late on a Friday night, you're essentially reinforcing the fact that in order to be recognized here at this organization, you need to work late on Friday nights, extra time. And that may be in complete violation with the mission, vision, and values of, gosh, we really want people to have work-life balance. And so it's fascinating that those little things can cause vision leak within an organization.
Right. Or if that is part of your culture and your vision, then great. But at least say what you are, rather than, like you said, say it's all about family or it's all about work-life balance. And yet, people are scared to take PTO or not work that extra overtime in order to get recognized. So it's just being whatever you say you want to be, just follow through with that.
Yeah. So just create that clarity within the organization. It just helps to reinforce the vision. And really, when we speak of vision today, we're talking about that foundation: mission, vision, values. So there's one other organization that we've worked with recently that is tied into kind of the real estate market. And on a recent leadership team meeting, kind of one individual shared that a team member from the organization came to them and said, "Hey, do I need to be worried about my job?" Now, this person had been fed news and updates and market commentary from people outside the organization, friends in the community. I think even a parent was involved in the communication. But this person was coming to work for at least 5 days, an entire work week, with a fear and an anxiety over whether they were going to lose their job.
Yeah.
And so they mentioned it to two other individuals within the organization as kind of just a side comment, but it hadn't been addressed publicly yet. And so in the meeting, this leadership team meeting, it came out that this individual had mentioned something about it. And so it provided a great context for me to just help them understand, hey, I believe you need to get in front of the organization, reinforce what you're doing to combat this market commentary or to combat this market effect, and how you believe that the organization is set up for success, even though there's some fear around real estate, the mortgage market, et cetera. So they had an impromptu team meeting across the entire organization. The founder of the organization shared what they had done back in 2008 to really see this as an opportunity to come out of this environment well positioned, how the organization had changed over the years, and what they were doing to make sure that they were protecting jobs and employees. And he just sort of openly shared, was transparent and vulnerable about it. And what happened afterwards is that there were 3 other individuals who came up and said, "Thank you so much for sharing. I was worried about the same thing." And so my comment to anyone who's watching and listening would just be, hey, take the time to reinforce within your team what may be fears across the entire organization. And so as vision leaks, we kind of said in the description, fear creeps in, and it kind of fills and dilutes the foundation of the organization. And so how can you address it publicly with transparency and vulnerability? Just walk people through, hey, here's how we're reacting to this. You don't need to fear anything. And that would be the positive side. But we were even talking, hey, it might also be negative. There might be some fears. And how do we keep people informed about that?
And the more that I read and research, it's people aren't expecting leaders to always have all the answers. They're more of wanting to be guided or connected to the right things. So, hey, leaders, we know in the mortgage industry right now, you have zero control of how this market will go. And that's okay to acknowledge. However, in your example of bringing up, hey, in 2008, this is the strategy that we learned from there. That's great. As an individual performer, so what do my metrics look like because I want to do well at my job. So can you tell me that? And then also, what are helpful resources?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a way that I can, a template that I can use to communicate with my customers to also walk them through what they may be afraid of? And just not only being able to address it, but if you can go another layer of even providing resources to people too, to do well at their job. Because again, we believe that people actually wake up and they want to do well.
Yeah.
And so if you could even provide resources, that's going to go a long ways in making sure that that culture is kept intact.
So Sarah made a great comment. She just said, listen to the concerns of those in your team.
Yeah.
And really there's this whole idea of listening too. So there's talking, communicating, reminding, but in order to remind them about things that would actually help them
Right.
with their fears, insecurities, doubts, all that, you have to know what it is that they're actually worried about.
Right.
And
have you given space?
That's
is
right.
what I was thinking is do you actually have, so maybe you can't always come out with this communication. You feel this pressure about, I don't know what people are feeling. Well, have you created a space, a meeting just for answering their questions? And there could even be a chance that you get a question you didn't expect. And I would say, actually, that's great. That's a win, because it's, hey, let our leadership team take that one away, come up with a plan, and we'll let you know when we can address that. And so creating that space, I think, is super helpful. So that, for sure, listening is huge.
So that actually brings me to another thought, which is, let's say that you're a part of an executive team or a leadership team, and you're getting all of this information. You're talking about market conditions. You're assessing the P&L. You know where things are. Just remember that you're privy to information that a lot of other people don't have. And so while you may think, gosh, we've talked about this before, we've reinforced this, we've reminded. Well, yes, maybe within your leadership team, but have you reminded people outside of that leadership team of what's going on? And so while you may have information that maybe helps calm the fears, while as a leadership team, you're getting back to the foundation, the mission, vision, values. In our kind of illustration, there's a lot of syrup in that space. It's not allowing space for kind of the other commentary, the news, the worries, the fears to come in. But I think just remember that that's the leadership team. And so I think sometimes it's a matter of saying, how do I step outside my leadership team, provide the space necessary for people to tell me their concerns, and then how do I take that back to the leadership team and share it? Because
that's great.
History would say, and based on our relationships with organizations, if one person's wrestling in one part of the organization with something, I promise you there's other people.
Sure.
And so being able to share that at the leadership team level would, and then you can decide whether is this something that we need to address at a team level or something that we need to address more corporately. So I think all good thoughts. Good thoughts.
Just on that thought too, is if you're the executive or the top of the org chart, empower your people to help you, empower your managers to be that front line, and they're the ones probably interacting the most with the individuals and aware of that. So giving them the space to actually lead their teams, hear them out, and provide that information, I think, is going to go a long way. And you'll see the managers that are truly living out the values you want and care for the people, and maybe the ones that, if they're coming back and they don't have any information, like you said, Chris, somebody's feeling something. So that could also give you an indication of that trust level in that team and with the organization and that manager as well.
I just thought about some other things that are happening in organizations, like even layoffs. I mean, that there are certain organizations that are affected by this market that have had to do layoffs. And I think that maybe it's out of just the discomfort involved in it. The best practice is that if there is a layoff, or if you've terminated somebody, or if there's, a change to a person's title or role, use it as an opportunity to share with the team why that happened, why it happened the way it did. Because we say pretty regularly, in the absence of information, people make up stories. They'll create their own narratives. And so if there has been a layoff, if there has been a change in staffing, if there has been a change in titles or anything, help people by sharing the information that you can share. You don't have to share everything. Some of it's not even important to share. Some of it's not legal to share.
Yeah.
But the point would be, share what you can share. Give people the honor to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I love how you illustrated that, because I think the trendy word right now is transparency. And you can't always be 100% transparent. Like you said, it could be even legal or other reasons why, or it's just, it's not going to create more motivation or security in the information that you have. But there is a level of being honest, though, and providing people information that they need in order to do well. And so the more that you can do that, then the better the trust is going to be. And I think Sarah's also bringing up some great comments on here as well. And where, as a leader, I also have to understand that people are coming with different experiences. So to your point, Chris, you may have done a great job laying the foundation of your values, your culture, and maybe you've even reminded, but it could become discouraging where it's like, wait, they need me to say it again. And it's like, well, yeah, because the person you may have onboarded 2 months ago may have experienced something completely different.
Yeah.
And so now you are trying to not just establish it up front, but it's a long process of people being able to build that trust. And it may not be anything about you specifically or your organization, but if you care about these people and you're understanding, well, they come with different experiences. And so even as a leader or a manager, I have to understand it's not always about me and the way that they're feeling insecure. It's past experiences that, are creating this fear that is creeping in as well.
Yeah. It's amazing how our brain stores perceptions of past experiences and how we bring those out. And so to individuals who've never experienced a market like this, they've got a whole new set of fears. To individuals who, may have never seen this before, may have been in college, may have been in school when this happened previously, they have no context through which to filter some of these fears. And so out is mission, vision, values, foundation of the organization. We call it corporate clarity. And in our fears, insecurities, anxieties, and worries. And so one just quick thought about this. We say vision leaks. Well, so how do I stop it from leaking? One suggestion would be to bring everything back to mission, vision, values. As you're making decisions for the future of the organization, as you're making decisions about people and positions and titles and potential layoffs and promotions, whatever, tie it back to mission, vision, values, because that does create the culture. So when there are performance issues, it's performance issues tied to, hey, in correlation or comparison to the values that we've established as an organization, the performance issues were this, this, and this. And again, I want to be careful because I'm not recommending that you talk poorly about anybody. I'm not recommending that you share anything you shouldn't share. But the more you can tie back to the foundation of the organization, mission, vision, values, it's almost like you should be repeating this on a weekly basis. People should kind of be sick of hearing you say it, because then you should hear it repeated in their own language. So language needs to be repeated in order to be kind of continued, in order for it to become part of the culture. And so leaders who are watching, I just encourage you, remind, repeat, be repetitive. It's the way to get it ingrained in the culture.
Yeah, and I think the goal is never to have it be finished. And I think that's maybe where in our mind, hey, we spent time, we did an offsite just to get these values, this vision, this mission, right? We brought in someone to help us with this. So we're done, right? And I think it's just a reminder of like, no, when we're working with people, which is where we're all at, this is something that's ongoing, whether, again, like you said, someone that has experiences or you're onboarding, you've grown tremendously. It's another time where it's very easy to get lost and like, whoa, wait, we had our values at this point. We brought on these people, and then now look at where we're at. So
yeah. So if we go back to this illustration, we initially poured in the syrup, which was it was a pretty strong concentrated syrup. And I think we do these offsites. We do these times where the team goes away. We get immersed in culture, mission, vision, values. Everybody feels great about it. And then as soon as we come back, that foundation gets diluted with all the other information that's hitting our heads. How do we continue to reinforce so that we get the strength back in the culture? And I think given what we're seeing in organizations right now, you've got fears and worries about political stuff. You've got fears and worries around market conditions, inflation, you've recession, all these words, and people have no idea how these words are going to affect their job. And so they're coming to work every day hoping that, gosh, I just heard that so-and-so got laid off, or I heard that this is going to affect profitability within companies. Whatever you need to do to calm those fears, just remember those fears are diluting the concentration of that corporate clarity. And so what was once clear has now been confused.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to be aware of that as leaders.
That's great.
Thoughts on that?
No, I agree. Just constantly remembering that people are human, and with everything that's going on, we all could use some more clarity, and that's what we're hoping for in our leaders. And but in the place that you get to lead, and you can have a little bit of say in that, and it goes a long way as well. So you can never outbe that. We're not saying you can compete or beat the news feed that is constantly coming in, but you saw that little dose of foundation really went a long way, and it's just bringing it back to that.
Yeah, I agree. So when we think about this idea, people need to be reminded. Vision leaks, fear creeps. Vision leaks through a few different things. One is you're not repeating it enough. Two, you've got actions within the organization that are against that clarity. You're tolerating behaviors that are not aligned. But that vision can leak just over time as well if you're not intentional about reminding and reinforcing and repeating. But people are being bombarded with fear, anxiety, worry, and it's diluting that concentration that you once had in the organization. And so our recommendation is just use this as an opportunity to remind people of why you exist, what you're trying to accomplish, how you're going to go about doing it. Use every opportunity you can to communicate that to people. Make sure that you keep people informed. Give people the space to tell you their concerns, their worries, their anxieties. Be transparent and vulnerable. If you don't know the answer, just say it. I think people would rather hear that than anything.
Right.
And so that's the way to combat this vision leak. It's a way to get this concentration level back within the organization. And so we will hope that was helpful to you practically.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, anything that you were thinking while I was talking that you want to add to that?
No,
anything
great.
to the list?
Yeah.
Okay. And so as we see many organizations who don't do this well, you may be a part of one of them. We just want to encourage you, then make sure that you're doing what you need to do to communicate clearly to the people that you may have under your leadership. Maybe you can figure out a way to lead up by just saying, hey, it's been a while since we've reinforced mission, vision, values. Maybe we could use it as an opportunity to get that back. So again, the Always About People show the whole idea was to cover topics that we're hearing with the organizations we're working with. And this was one over the past couple of weeks that we helped one organization reinforce. Just remind people. We saw an immediate effect. We saw people coming up and thanking leaders for reinforcing and calming the fears. And so we thought that would be encouraging to you today. For those of you who watch us live every week, thank you for joining us again. We want to just ask, we would love comments, feedback, questions, and we want to encourage you, like, subscribe, follow, whichever platform you're on. We're live Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can always watch the recordings later. feel free to share these episodes with people. It might be a passive aggressive way of sharing information with someone that you want to see change. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.